when you run an ad that says "I am not a witch," it implies that your opponent is a witch. So this creates a really difficult situation, you know, in a political race, because now Christine O'Donnell's opponent is going to have to come out and say, "Well, I'm not a witch either," you know, and then it turns into essentially an empty discussion. But you know, the truth of the matter is that by confronting the issue, which was for her, you know, having said, you know, that, you know, she sort of in high school had some friends who were witches, and that, you know, it was high school stuff. On a satanic altar, which most of us have had experiences in high school where we ended up on a satanic altar, but it was. Yeah, and it was usually the principal's office, you know, that we referred to that way. But for Christine O'Donnell, she had to get that sort of out of the way. And if nothing else, the ad is what Calvin Klein always said, which is there's no such thing as bad publicity, because it's been played by everyone. Everyone Googles it. We're talking about it. So it's gotten massive free media, and beyond the cost of the ad itself, Christine O'Donnell has now got, you know, $3 billion worth of exposure from it. And a lot of people kind of blow it off and don't care. She looks much better. They've done a comb over. They've changed her clothes from Sarah Palin red to black. So she, with a little white pearl. So, you know, she looks like, you know, Bush's mom. And this is only hotter and younger. So this is where American politics is now. This is the bar over which people have to jump now. Very high bar to people who do essentially pretty much statistical analysis of elections. And my colleagues say that if Christine O'Donnell doesn't win this race, that their chances are less, but that they have too many numbers that are soft for other races that they can't predict what the outcome will be. And so the chances of the Republicans gaining the House and Senate are still very good. And I've seen other analyses in which the projections are that if everything goes really well, they could take over the House and Senate by overwhelming and almost unbelievable numbers. So this is a year that is so unstable that Christine O'Donnell has apparently some secret intelligence information that the Chinese are going to take over the United States. That's the kind of year it is. And you really never answer any questions, but you appear extremely knowledgeable and reasonable and centered, and you make you reassure people that you are going to solve their problems, that you're professional. You stay away from cornering yourself in a pocket where there is great intensity in the voters, but where the numbers are very thin. And I think that's the advice that you give people, is you don't allow yourself to be too much marked by the intensity of people who might vote for you, but instead you find where that magic number is of 50% plus one, and you balance that out. And the other thing you do is you define your opponent before your opponent can define you. And in a lot of races in Iowa, for example, candidates didn't do that, and so they now are playing catch-up because they never defined their opponents early on. And I think that's one of the most critical things you can do. And the other, I would recommend an article real quickly in the New York Times by Matt Bai called "Voters Disgust Isn't Only About Issues." And what he reports on is this focus group that a nonpartisan group did. And what they found was that voters really didn't care so much about politics, candidates, or anything else. They were extremely distressed about the state of American society. They were upset about the breakdown of civil society, the disappearance of common courtesy, the relentless stream of data from digital devices, the proliferation of lawsuits, and the insidious influence of the media on their children. And I can go on, but I won't. This article describes people who are not mad about policy, but they're mad about where the United States is as a society. And there is no politician who can do anything about that. That's really frightening, because people are just simply frustrated, angry, disheartened, demoralized about, for example, drivers who are hostile and inconsiderate, and teachers who can't discipline kids because the rules say that they can't even touch kids. People are just mad as hell about the place where American society has ended up in 2010, and that's a daunting challenge. Question. A lot of negative campaign advertising, strangely enough and perversely enough, is actually intended to discourage people who are not very partisan and have them walk away disgusted and saying, I hate this, I don't know what to believe, these ads are confusing, and I'm just going to not vote. Because the parties don't like it when there are people mobilized and voting where they don't have a list of those people and know how they're going to vote. And there's been a lot of research done on it. A lot of negative campaign advertising is meant to essentially shake the trees so the sort of marginal fruit will fall off, and all that's left are predictable voters. And then you can drive them to the polls because you know who they are. You send them, advanced early voting forms that they can fill out to get their ballot in the mail, which we've all been getting those forms, and that is very discouraging. It's intended to mobilize the supporters and to drive away people who aren't that passionate about it and who can never get any good information from political ads because they are intended to essentially be just negative. They're not a briefing on anything. Well, and Rahm Emanuel, he may have actually gone in and twisted some arms in Congress and gotten some of the Obama legislation through. But I think Rahm Emanuel must have given Obama some very poor political advice because Obama basically went into a deep sleep for the last 2 years after the election. He lost the public support. He lost the bully pulpit. He lost the young generation that he was supposed to mobilize with all of his tremendous amount of technology. And I think in the end, Rahm Emanuel really did not do Obama much of a favor because he's leaving as, I'm going to go and run for mayor of Chicago, and he's leaving an Obama who is frantically trying to regain ground. So I'm not sure that he did such a wonderful job. Which Obama in the end may very well deeply, deeply regret, because there are a lot of people who say that Obama's troubles and the Democrats' troubles are largely because the agenda was so ambitious that healthcare reform, while some people may think it's wonderful, really gave the Republicans a giant club with which they've beaten up the Democrats, and that it may have been the wrong thing to do because people really were concerned about only two things. One was jobs, two was Afghanistan. And those two things, if he had concentrated on them, he might have made some progress on. So I think history isn't going to be very kind to Rahm Emanuel, frankly.